Anxiety is arguably a defining condition of our times, though it's not nearly so simple as is usually thought. There are many diverse causes and factors, a complex spectrum of presentation, and a wide range of intensity and debility. Depending on the case, anxiousness can be the monster that handicaps our every aim and attempt, or more benignly, it may be merely the uncertainty driving our inquiries and the unease that compels and accelerates our efforts. There's a huge difference between feeling anxious about something challenging that you hope to do, breathless and lit up with excitement, and with feeling overcome with anticipation or terrorized by looking at the day's gloomy newsfeed. Understanding variations and nuances can help ensure that any benefit is recognized and consciously employed, so that any unhealthy impacts are treated and improved, whether that's through researched and purposed herbs, a carefully evaluated medication, natural therapies, advantageous lifestyle adjustments, or an adjustment in perspective and attitude. If you find this at all helpful, I hope you will share it with others and share the link on your social media. Thank you. It can get real bad, It can get so bad that it makes us constantly fearful, in terror of the unknown, questioning ourselves and our beliefs and hopes, shackling decisive action and helpful response, and generally ruining our very experience of life. At its more personally harmful and society damaging levels, anxiety can precipitate a state of persistent panic with largely unreasonable or even delusional fears similar to paranoia, with agitation and alarm becoming the default. Among the most consequential results are a miserable state of inescapable nervousness and dread, made all the worse by debilitating self-doubt, habitual risk avoidance, and subsequent deleterious inaction. Typically, this will precipitate unhealthy sleep deprivation, overeating, substance abuse, or other forms of self-harm. Now, when the heat is turned up to a boil with a pressure cooker, it can blow its lid without a sufficient port for venting. But unlike with a cooker, it's not enough for us to just vent when the pressure gets to be too much. And complaining without remedy more often just amplifies the debilities, amplifies the displeasures. An idyllic situation would, of course, be the highly unrealistic elimination of all that which is has us perpetually, unrelentingly on edge. If we could just possibly get rid of what's driving us crazy, like an end to awful wars and nuclear weaponry, or an end to racist and narcissist despots. That would be good. How about putting a stop to government surveillance and intrusive control, or impinging artificial intelligence, or disastrous climate change, and the accelerating extinction of crucial plant and animal species? Relative high degrees of anxiety might even be worth it to us, bug-eyed and bugged out, if it meant a likelihood of our solving the world's larger problems and curing its dis-ease. But in reality, anxiety is corrupting our perception of ourselves and what we might accomplish, despoiling our dreams and handicapping our quests, replacing any satisfaction or calm with a sense of inadequacy, vulnerability, and endlessly impending calamity. In those cases, where anxiety is coupled with a condition like ADHD, judicious use of certain drugs like Ritalin might indeed be called for, especially due to its genetic component and the hardwiring into the neural and hormonal systems. I know I've witnessed someone that I greatly care about unable to sleep due to her anxiety, and she's been crazily stressed since she was a child, even without an unsolvable quandary or an evident danger. Our daughter is now an adult and struggles with it as well, emphasizing the neural genetics of their trouble. But more commonly, almost everyone today can be said to be more nervous than what feels good or is physically and emotionally healthy for us. We're strapped with ill-defined expectations, victims to the marketing manipulations of billionaires and soulless corporations. Our livelihoods and living standards are at threat. Bombarded with political untruths and unverifiable information of every kind. Biased news sources bombard us with bad news. Doom scrolling on social media platforms leaves us not only dispirited, but depressed and painfully apprehensive and excruciatingly brittle, sometimes to the point of incapacitating hysteria. And that's for those of us with normal neurological wiring and limited traumas. Others are experiencing unimaginably greater degrees of suffering, ever more frequently diagnosed as an anxiety disorder. Depending on what sources I'm currently looking at, there's said to be between a 70% and a 100% increase in extreme chronic anxiety disorder, especially among young adults. And it's usually addressed by the system in one or two questionable, if conventional, ways. First, pharmaceutical drugs, such as the currently used Prozac, Zoloft, or Lexapro, all of which lower the unpleasant sensation with the common side effect of deadening emotional response overall, essentially causing a flatlining of both sensation and response. Secondly, is psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy that tends to address negative thought patterns and redirect focus instead of facilitating our acting to identify and actually change in the real world what threatens us, what we value, and what we know to be right. Now clearly, oversensitivity, stimulation, and cognitive overload are serious problems. It's for good reason that our psyches want things to simplify and to smooth out, to provide a valid, virtuous platform without the dissonance and the discomfort, the consequences of complex reality, unsettling anticipation, imperative and thus always stressful choice. Unfortunately, this natural yearning for cognitive ease sets us up for accepting falsehoods that are repeated often enough that it sets us up for manipulation and control. That which would serve nature, society, and ourselves is rooted in truths that are messy, complicated, and sometimes contradictory, almost always situational, constantly shifting and evolving, and neither external issues or internal stress are well solved by sedation or desensitization, by acceptance or resignation, by reduced responsibilities or strategic placation. So before we obsess with eradicating anxiety, let's first put it into some perspective. As difficult as anxiousness can be, imagine for just a minute the extreme opposite of being anxious. Imagine what it would be like to feel that we know all we need to know about life in the present, or all that we need to know about the threats and possibilities that are coming. Imagine not feeling alerted by change or challenged by the unknown, not ever overcome with anticipation or prodded by some demanding urgency. Picture, if you can, avoiding new knowledge and experience in order to maximally protect yourself. Always being truly okay with whatever comes our way. Satisfied regardless of the level of your accomplishment. Avoiding worry by reducing the chances that we take. Imagine encountering a dozen forks on a forest trail without the pressure of choosing the best one for your journey. Imagine yourself somehow indifferent as to what direction to take. Imagine meeting a new person you're strongly attracted to, but being unaffected by any butterflies in your stomach. standing on the edge of a vertical cliff or some huge life change, but absent the giddy uncertainty and apprehension, absent the insistent call to get past any fears or confusion and get on with the sating of your curiosity, chasing the wonder, overcoming personal challenges and dangers, rising up and actively resisting the powers and influence of destruction, and fulfilling your personal mission in the moment. For a majority of sufferers, anxiety isn't so much some inescapable and nerve-wracking urge to get away from something, not so much as it is our urgent, ancient, primal need to recognize and understand what we're being faced with, and an overpowering keenness to come up with a plan and a means for dealing with it. A need to have at least the potential and the possibility to make a difference. While it's depleting to always be on alert, looking in all directions, straining the senses, a certain level of hypervigilance can make us cautious and therefore safer. A certain level of hypervigilance can bring us to our attention elements, patterns, and potentials that we might otherwise remain oblivious to. It's primarily at the point where feeling anxious begins to sabotage rather than heighten our ability to respond, progress, or enjoy, that we'd finally be wise to assess and treat it as a problem to resolve. Seek and do the work of implementing remedy, if so. One identifiable course for this is a combination of plant allies, mind and body adjustments, and a curated daily existence full of positive proactivity and imbued with a deep calmness grown out of correct and self-chosen response. Calmness within just and hopeful action. It's not enough for our minds to know that some perceived threats are illusory. Our nervous systems aren't readily convinced by reason or evidence. And that's where the medicine of plants plays such an important part. A majority of my community are herbalists and natural healers, many of whom know far better than I about the range of potentially helpful herbs. Each have specific profiles, actions, and applications beyond the scope of this episode. And you do well to extensively research and try to determine which species serve your particular personal condition, symptoms, constitution, physiological and psychological needs, including different botanical nervines, relaxants, tonics, and adaptogens, such as, just to name a few, bleeding heart, valerian, lavender, cassandra, ashwagandha, sage, lemon balm, motherwort, damiana, and kava kava. None of these can be said to be optimum or even actionable for every sort of person every time. Cannabis, for example, actually exacerbates anxiety for certain types of folks, even though for many others it safely smooths the edges and contributes to calm, centered presence without sacrificing their motivation or creativity. Herbs, indeed, but they're by no means the only valuable natural treatment or aid, and they work best for anxiety in partnership with other treatments and behaviors. For yourself and those you counsel or treat, there's a lot that yoga and actual physical contact or activity of any kind can do to return you to the security of your inner being, back to sense-filled presence without being agonizingly stretched and rattled by anxiety symptoms. I admit, I've never been patient with formal meditation, but finding moments for solitude, quietness, and mindfulness can have a profound effect. And if one figures out how to get a good sleep every night, That can do a lot to reset subconscious loops and reset mechanisms, to undo one's harmful anxious patterns and to readjust the tone. When we look at the behaviors of wild creatures, we can see anxiety in nature more as a reaction to the uncertainty and fear that they might experience. It often arises from either a perceived restriction of their options or else from these animals feeling out of place. Their nervous apprehension is clearly less overpowering whenever a creature feels at home, in familiar and supportive environs, and it will subside, in fact, when instead of freezing, they either attack or fly away from what they suspect might be a threat. With us, quote-unquote, civilized humans, anxiety is more likely a chronic condition, resulting from trying to be something we're not, trying to fit in, to keep up, to be approved. It comes with remaining frozen when facing an onrushing problem. It comes with being terrorized by the responsibility and the consequences of making a choice. But it also takes hold when we're ensconced in our racing minds and thus out of our bodies, and when we feel literally out of place. A way to address this condition is by daily practicing conscious embodiment, feeling at home in our wild natural selves and at home in whatever region, ecosystem, and neighborhood that we might inhabit, root in, and blossom forth from. It can help to do your yoga or your workouts outside in natural settings, to engage in forest bathing and mindful hikes, to listen through the ears of the wildlife and see the world through their eyes, to make wordless love beneath sun-tickled trees, and to pick out fanciful shapes in the clouds rolling onward above you. You might have to take a drive to find solitude, I know, but being urban doesn't mean that everything has to be artificial. In fact, town life calls upon you to introduce nature's influence and succor. It requires that you be natural in the way of authenticity, sensibility, wholeness, and belonging, and wild in the sense of being ultra-aware, following one's heart and instincts, acting on what feels most right. Nature can help us even in the most concrete-laden city, connecting us to our native sense of being, perceiving and knowing through a potted plant on a windowsill or through some bird landing on a decorative fence just beyond your porch. The arresting sound of a sudden breeze can instantly extricate us from tedious, disembodied, or repetitious thoughts. Awful, enervating feelings will sometimes recede a little with just a sniff of copal incense, with just an example of a purring or playing house cat, or the right music played live with real vibrating instruments. I in no way want to trivialize the more crippling examples of anxiety currently increasing in both intensity and the number of people affected. But there are ways and means of reducing the misery and the harm that we can try, whether we're dealing with a lifelong affliction and unfortunate wiring, or just the cultural and situational spinouts that leave us shaking with night terror levels of vulnerability, of precariousness and panic sowing inescapability. In all cases, step one is to seek remedy. Get help. Get help assessing the degree of damage. Ascertain the lifestyle choices, exposures, and behaviors causing or worsening your anxiety. Take long breaks from news feeds and conflict-driven social media. Parse the difference between genuine, immediate dangers and the limitless potential problems and fear-inducing delusions. Treat the condition with calming herbs and therapies, not with alcoholic drinks or drugs that deaden awareness and response. Practice deep breathing when you feel most wound up. Express yourself, even your concerns, in person or in writing rather than bottling them up. Develop supportive relationships and strengthening communities with a shared goal of protection and healing. Neither deny and hide away from, nor give all your attention to the unfolding negatives and the wretchedly worrisome. Learn to laugh at the absurdity and the contradictions of even the most alarming of impending perils. Ground yourself in your essential being, your strengths, your values, and the loving reasons for your actions. Practice regularity. Find some comfort in self-assigned schedules. Strive to stay centered and embodied, visualizing the roots holding you fast to yourself and to the earth, to what matters most. Make love often and feel love for life at every moment. You have the ability to respond and the strength to survive. You have a personalized mission to make the world just a little better and healthier. And the worst things that can happen actually make your caring more precious and more essential. Your efforts more laudable. Your loving accomplishments more amazing. Embrace the fact that dangers in the course of events can never be either completely predicted or completely eliminated. Our responses are crucial for us and the course of the world, but they can begin to come more and more from a place of calm recognition and satisfying determination instead. Such calmness doesn't come from being sedated, secluded, or even fully sated. It doesn't mean becoming less sensitive or denying our vulnerability. Not necessarily any less interested, less called upon, less driven, or more patient. Most distress has easily identifiable causes and perpetrators. Instead of just feeling like we're being put through hell, let's give them hell. We can gradually transition from being subject to fear-inducing manipulations and on to experiencing urgency as a synapse-stimulating opportunity to shine, to re-envision, to create, and to remedy. As soon as we act to both improve our immediate situations and stand up for what's best for the world, we begin the shift from foreboding and dread of the unseen to curiosity and anticipation, to spirit-lifting excitement and hopeful possibility, to effectively dealing and ultimately